has 3 decades of dedicated experience in this, specializing in supporting adolescents, young adults, and families as they navigate life through most challenging transitions. Few of the common issues that you find among teen and young adults
That's why I like to start with like what's normal and what isn't, because a lot of this was normal stuff.
people are having the diagnosis on social media.
We discovered that the girls were on the phones like basically twice as much as boys. So every teen girl started reporting an uptick in anxiety.
How much do you think caffeine affects mental health?
Prunes back, which means like it highlights the good pathway.
How do you think the dynamics of couple have changed? If there is a chance of getting into a person's brain who's suicidal, what do you think will we able to find? Welcome everybody for another podcast today. Today we are talking to somebody who has 3 decades of dedicated experience in the field of teen therapy. It's more than my age, is what I was just mentioning it to her as well. A compassionate and versatile professional specializing in supporting adolescents, young adults, and families as they navigate life through most challenging transitions. So today we'll be talking about how and what are the most common challenges that these people face and how to deal with them in itself. And then we slowly learn about the stories and experiences from somebody called Donna C. Moss. Thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us today on the Take podcast. It's wonderful to have you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I'm glad
Absolutely.
it worked out. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking your time and joining us. Of course, I know the busy schedule that you'll be having. So quickly jumping into the topic, of course, we all do have some sort of mental issues relate these days. It's been very common that everybody's suffering with something, one or the other. People like you who are there to support, people like you who are there to help is something that is really people have to be really thankful for the profession that you come from. So quickly jumping into this topic, right? So what are few of the common issues that you find among teen and young adults that are when it comes to the mental health issues or mental health problems that they're having?
Right. So, I mean, I was always treating teens and young adults as a population I really care about because personally, when I was in my 20s, I went through a pretty big rough patch myself after college because you're like, go from being surrounded by your peers your whole life to like being all alone. It's a big kind of shock and it's a lot of pressure too. So I really can relate to them when they feel like they've been set back in some ways, and it's quite normal. And then, of course, during the pandemic, we discovered that the girls were on the phones like basically twice as much as boys. So every teen girl started reporting an uptick in anxiety. So suddenly, I'm an older person now, and I'm the most popular person that I could imagine because suddenly every teenager thinks they have anxiety, which they do. It's valid and it's real because they were locked out of school for 2 years. So it was I would get a referral pretty much once a day during the pandemic.
That is something that I do agree with. I mean, being a teenager in that phase, I was like 18 and 19 when the pandemic was on its peak. And I remember, you have less people to talk to. There is not too many, around you that you can, engage in the conversation like you generally engage in your university or college.
Right. Right. And my own kids missed a chunk of college because of that. They're in their 20s now, and it makes me very, very sad for all of them.
I mean, it's really surprising that I remember that every morning when I used to wake up for college, I used to think that, oh shit, I have to be at the 8 a.m. class. My
Yeah.
God. And then once it's not there around, I felt a major missing in life. It's like a big chunk of my day has been missing because I don't see it anymore in my life now. So that is, I get what you're trying to explain. So talking about this topic more, how do you think pandemic have reshaped mental health? And how do you think pandemic have gotten the, like, if I have to phrase it right, so how do you think pandemic have got the awareness among the people about mental health?
Right. So, in other words, all these teens had then, and young adults then had a hook for their feelings called anxiety. And they all want that diagnosis and they all got that diagnosis, which is fine because it's appropriate to this crazy world we're in. And a lot of them just needed support. They thought that they were going crazy. For example, a lot of teens say to me, "Oh, I think I'm disassociating," which is probably not the case, but they're just sick of sitting in their room, so they start to space out kind of. So a lot of them just need a lot of validation and reassurance and support and family support for their changing needs and their overthinking, which is a hallmark of that brain development at that age anyway. So that's why I like to start with like what's normal and what isn't, because a lot of this was normal stuff and we don't have to pathologize everything.
It is that I guess if ever in my channel that I start to do this, I would love to put that particular statement that you have just told on the thumbnail as well, because we don't have to pathologize everything. That is absolutely true, because oftentimes anxiety, depression, stress,
Mhm.
all these are something that everybody faces on their daily life. It's just some of them can handle it, some of them need help to handle that.
Right, exactly. And of course, we know that the social media amplifies the negatives, seems to amplify the negatives more. But it also can be used for a lot of help and support and normalizing.
So how do you think it negatively affects, like social media negatively affects?
Well, basically because girls are spending too much time on their phones. And this guy out of NYU, his name is Jonathan Haidt. He wrote a book called The Anxious Generation, and he correlated the uptick in the anxiety with the ubiquity of the iPhone around 2011. So that cohort got hit really hard. And then the pandemic just pushed them into further isolation. So, um, so I'm working with a lot of them on just coping skills, basic mind body interventions that are free, that they could do anytime, anywhere, and just learn better coping skills than what they had before.
And so it is so you if I'm getting it right, so you're trying to mention that people being around on their phones, and people being around their phones are tend to have higher anxiety when it comes to teenage adults, the people
Yes,
who use it
yes,
more.
that's been correlated, not necessarily a causal link, but a definite correlation.
So
And this Jonathan Haidt said, look, to the best intervention you can give to all these kids is to take away the phone at about 10 p.m. and to not have the phone during school. That could save so much trouble. Yesterday, I had a teenager in my office in person, one of the first since the pandemic, and she basically the whole entire time she was just telling me a he said she said story about something that this one posted this and then this one had this reaction. I mean, they get completely lost in it. Doesn't mean that they have permanent anxiety and depression for the rest of their lives, but it means that they can't concentrate.
so basically you're trying to explain that they're trying to tend to live a life that is not exactly reality kind of thing.
Right, but also they get these tidbits of social situations online, and then it doesn't go away. Like, I had another young 13-year-old boy saying, like, he made a mistake, he posted something that he shouldn't have, a kid was bullying him, yada, yada, and then the next thing you know, it lives on for days and weeks and months,
Yeah.
whereas in our time, it would just blow over.
So I understand what you're trying to explain, because that is something that even I sometimes go through, which happens often,
Mhm.
because when you're in a setting where people can judge you without like actually letting you know the identity of who they are. Because oftentimes,
Yeah.
let's say, I can give you a basic example that people might even relate. That is, oftentimes it happens that if a person who does fitness, right, can be judged on the basis of a person who does it professionally as him. Yet you on social media you often find these kind of people who have, you don't even know who they are, they don't have a particular name, it's a
Yeah.
random account, and they try to bully you on social media because they can. There is
Uh-huh.
no reason for it.
Uh-huh.
There is no reason for it. It's just they
Uh-huh.
can.
Yeah.
And I personally feel, I guess whatever you're saying, this cohort of people might get a lot of affected by that particular thing. And so I would like to ask you a couple of questions. So generally they state this, right, that when you are with your family or you come from a family and you are very closely associated with your family, you often tend to have lesser mental health issues than you being alone by yourself. So how much
Uh-huh.
of this do you agree with?
Oh, 100%. I mean, everybody needs social support at every single age and stage. And these are some of the toughest stages, adolescence and young adulthood. I mean, the brain isn't fully developed yet. So they need all the support they could.
So my question now, the follow-up question I had was, so in COVID, we all were with, like, kind of, most of them at least were with families. Yet people have had all these mental health issues on a higher scale now. So why do you think the reason behind that is?
Well, one of course is that we're better at acknowledging, what's what. So every time we get better at diagnosis, it seems to include a wider swath because we're defining it better. There's not necessarily a huge uptick. So there's always that question, is it really more or are we just getting better at identifying? So who really knows? But nevertheless,
Oh, so
yeah.
you're trying to say that it it's not always the spike in the graph that contributes that people are having issues. It might be that the professional who's trying to identify the issue is getting better at it.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. They always say that when there's an uptick. It's hard to tease out the cause and effect and things like that. But I'll leave that to the researchers.
Absolutely. And talking about this, I get one question. So, how often do you find people that are having anxiety or depression and stuff that come, and lately this has been on a spike, that most of the, when it comes to the diagnosis, people are having the diagnosis on social media, even that is happening right now.
Mhm.
So what happens is they try to post that this is what I feel, and somebody tells them that you have, oh bro, you have anxiety.
Mhm. Right. And see,
So
people like to have the label, but I find it to be reductionistic. So you may have anxiety. I have anxiety, but it doesn't define me. And that's also a piece of learning that I have to engage in with the kids because they have to understand that or believe that it's not all of who they are. It's just part of who they are. And these things
that
can
is
be temporary and these things can come and go at different phases of life, but they don't have that experience yet. So then I start to engage them in learning to tolerate their feelings. And that can be also a mind body approach to tolerating, holding discomfort, just like in yoga, where you might feel a twinge, but you can hold it for maybe an extra 30 seconds and then back off.
so so what do you mean by saying that? So that, I mean, I guess that is the approach that you take when you deal with these cases.
Right. Well, I don't like stop the session and say, now let's do yoga, but I'm trying to bring in these mind body concepts so they can practice it on their own.
Can you go deeper into the topic of mind body connection kind of thing? Like I would love to know what exactly. So how do you deal with, like, let's say if somebody comes to the office of yours and they want to talk about something, and maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's depression or whatever it is. So how do you take things forward, and at what, and how do you look at the mind body connection in this particular the phrase?
Right. Well, first of all, it worked for me, so that's why I like it. So I went through lots of different things in my life, um, and from depression episode or anxiety episodes to then full blown trauma. And then what they say in the trauma work is you can't do talk therapy until your body is relaxed and not in a state of fight, flight, freeze. So, so that's what the, to me, the biggest breakthrough in psychotherapy is that talking isn't enough. So I just try to introduce that, like, how can we help you process your trauma, calm down, relax your nervous system? Then we can do things like cognitive behavioral therapy, which involves a more mental effort.
Okay, so that is very interesting. So you're basically saying that a person with any issue can't just be fine by talking.
No, just more about trauma. Other people who have just light depression, light anxiety, talk therapy can be great and it works.
Okay.
And medication can be great and it works. But adding in this other piece of learning to relax your body can open another pathway for doing, work on yourself.
And like, what are the practices that you follow to control the body kind of
Yeah,
thing?
well, first of all, we all know that exercise is the number one antidepressant in the world, right? It works. Also, medication, exercise, therapy, all these things, we know they work. So exercise, movement, anything that gives you a flow, anything creative. I don't care what it is, a coloring book or you're a famous artist, doesn't matter. When you let go of your anger in those moments, like a flow, then you can be more in touch with your own self compassion.
So basically, subconsciously, you're trying to do something that your body loves to do.
Yes, yes. Put yourself in a state of calm, however you want to do it, and then you can dive deeper into what's bothering you.
And so I have been trying to tell this to a lot of people, but I am really happy that I heard it from you
Oh,
that exercising is the number one therapy that you can have to yourself without a therapist.
yeah, absolutely. And meditation and journaling and listening to calming music, whatever, you know, floats your boat, but allows you to not be in that state of like constant, what they call hypervigilance, which is danger, 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 you know?
And that is
We know this from life experience, right? Like you see an animal in the forest when they're in that freeze state, they can't, they're just protecting themselves. They're shut down. That's what we do. So first release the shutdown and then do some work.
oh, that is really interesting. And talking about that, actually, I mean, this is something that I generally do in my own life. I tend to see a lot of similarities in a human being's behavior with an animal behavior. So if you take aside the ideology of morals, which means this is wrong and this is right, oftentimes we are no better than an animal. Any animal you take from wildlife.
Mhm,
So that is the general reaction that we have,
mhm.
even if we are put in that circumstance. Let's say if somebody is attacking me,
Yeah.
what's my? There are two options: either if I fight or flight,
Right.
and both animal does.
Right.
It's the same thing with
Or
mostly.
or the freeze, which is a lot of people come to therapy and they're just stuck. I can't make a decision. I can't move forward. That's the theme. Why am I stuck? Why am I stuck? I even wrote some articles called "Why Am I Stuck?" And so that is a great starting point because we have to get unstuck so you can make better decisions and move through the world with more ease. And then the other
And
thing is talking to teenagers and young adults. You have to vibe with them. And even though I'm older now and I might look like their grandma, I still intentionally come across with an easy vibe, with humor, with talking back to them. They don't want this anymore, which was the old fashioned way where you talk, I listen. They want someone that's relatable.
So so technically, I mean, now that you have a 3 decade experience, of course. So going back in time for a bit, so that was the initial therapy that people used to get. Like they used to just come and just rant in the office and then just leave eventually.
Uh, Give or take, the therapist was not expected to talk a whole lot, which is fine. They still do it that way because it's not about you, the therapist. It's about, of course, you hold the silences, you wait for them, you go where the patient is. These are all principles of social work. But it's much more interactive the way I do it because that's what they want.
And coming to the point that how different do you think a young adult, like let's say a 13 to 16-year-old's cognitive thinking and mental health capability to like 13 to 16 and then coming to 18 to 20, then coming
Right.
20 to
Right.
25. So what are few changes that you spot? So if somebody of these age groups is going through something, they might know that, okay, once I grow up or once I move forward in time with life experiences, I will be changing. So what do you think the mental capability of these
Right.
set of age groups?
I think we overestimate the mental capacity of high schoolers in general. Like, in other words, they can look the look and they can talk the talk and walk the walk. But and they could be a really smart kid too, straight A kid, but they're not really that emotionally mature. And you can see that because they make really bad, poor decisions. Why? Because the brain develops from the back to the front. And the front is where all that important stuff, the executive function is. It's not there yet. So that's when you see a boy who's like 16, who's the smartest kid in the class. He did the homework, he got an A, but he can't find it because he lost it in his backpack. That's classic. I see it again and again. So it's like you can't organize, can't plan, can't make a date and keep it. Total flake. But a smart kid. But they're just not, putting it all together yet. No matter yeah, how
And that's the same with men and women in when it comes to this because
no, men are delayed. Sorry. But men are delayed, at least 2 years behind women in it.
yeah, that's what I generally
Mhm.
hear because so you tell me that emotionally a woman or a girl child is much more quickly matured
Yeah.
to understand what she's going through or what she's feeling
Yes.
than a man.
Yeah. It just, you know, for a lot of reasons that are probably beyond us, we that seems to be the case. Yeah.
So and it was really interesting. So basically, if the brain develops from back to
Mm,
front, which means cerebrum, so
mm,
the middle part is where it starts. Let's say,
mm.
so my cognition and everything is ready now. So I can understand mathematics, I can
Yeah.
understand logic, and then eventually, as it moves forward,
Uh,
uh, I will be trying to understand what my body is going through. Then eventually, my feelings and how I feel.
yes.
That's what.
And then the final would be sort of like more analytical abilities. Yeah. But
Oh,
that's
like
very rough. But I'm not a scientist, but that's the idea. Yeah.
so. I mean, finally, as it comes down to like the end of development, you can start to analyze things like, okay, this is what I have to be doing, and this is right, this is wrong. So
Yes.
my choice of work should be this. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
So
so
then in the young adults, I find that they get stuck because of more environmental reasons, like their parents can't help them, or they bombed out of college, or they just can't pass math, that kind of stuff.
so these people are from the range of like in their like late teens, which is 18, 19,
Yeah,
20, 20.
later, yeah, the college kids more, ha- get affected by environmental patterns that, like, they're just not performing as well as their peers, and they start to fall behind in these, very important steps like learning to drive, learning to swim, learning to go make a meal for themselves. Some kids just, aren't moving through the next phase of development properly.
Sometimes that is something that I go through because I'm also in the same range of age. Uh, there is stress of success sometimes that
Right.
I have to be knowing these things
Hmm.
because my peers do.
Right.
So I see a friend of mine who can swim, get good grades, and do all this stuff, and I expect that okay, wait, I also have to be that person.
Hmm.
And this thing gets infectious among the people
Yeah.
that somebody will start struggling with this. So going back to the high school kids, uh, I would like to know one thing, which oftentimes, I mean, so we all coming from the background of high school, we all have got bullied at some point, especially guys, especially men.
Uh-huh.
The boyfriendship starts from bullying.
Uh-huh.
The roots of a friendship among
Mm.
boys are bullying.
Mm.
How do you think that affects on long-term mental issues of
Right.
men, like
That's
the growth of men?
a great, great question. So I just read because I was doing some research on a project that mental anguish of being rejected is just uses the same pain pathways as actual pain. So when you're like my client over there, she got disinvited from the after prom from her whole friend group for some reason that it's not even clear. And that rejection is the same as pain, actual pain.
Like physical pain,
Yeah,
physically inflicted pain.
yeah, yeah.
And how do you think on long term will this affect the person's mental health, like the growth of the cognition, growth of emotional understanding or
Right.
whatever it is?
So if they can take some time and process some of these setbacks, they can catch up again, right? So if they have other things being held equal, that they're in a stable environment, they can go back and kind of redo some of these developmental milestones with the guidance of a therapist, for example. But others, just
Because
things start to stack up so much that it becomes like a mountain, and they just can't get they start to use avoidance instead of moving forward.
so I mean, one thing is if let's say somebody have gone through like set of trauma in their life due to high school bullying, that
Mhm, mhm,
constantly they get bullied among public and then they're struggling with something and then eventually they get into college.
mhm.
So uh and I hear it oftentimes that these kind of people tend to be introverts eventually in their life.
In what in their life?
They tend to be introverts eventually in their life because they got bullied so much in
Uh,
their high school
uh,
that they try to shut themselves down
yeah.
from any kind of such
Right,
friendships.
right. But see, here's the thing, avoidance reinforces avoidance. That's one of my biggest takeaways. It's so convenient. Like, this is hard. This is hard. This is hard. Oh, well, I'll just skip it. But then what happens?
And on long run, let's say these people grow. Let's say they get to 30s and 40s and
Uh-huh,
they get married.
uh-huh,
How do you see their relationships or their mentality towards partner or kids
uh-huh.
or futuristic things change due to bullying?
Right. Well, there's a big focus on attachment theory, which I won't go into because it's everywhere. But so relationships can be based on different attachment styles that you've developed over your lifetime. And many people are resilient. That's another big word in therapy. Resilient means you can somehow, some way, even with the worst hardships, take yourself up and keep going. And other people just simply can't. And we don't know exactly why that is. Just some people have more strength than others.
That is okay. So it is called resilience. Where I mean, the word in itself means that, of course.
Mhm,
So you mean so resilient nature of a person
mhm.
contributes how they compete with the mental health issues and they move forward or they cruise forward in their life
Yeah,
despite of having them.
correct. Right. There's a certain ingredient And we don't fully know what that's all about, but it seems to be. But we can work on someone's strengths with them in therapy. Focus on the strengths. What are you good at? What can you be good at? What can you feel good about? And build on them.
And do you think people with these kind of problems often have any issues in their careers, like choosing career paths and stuff?
Well, I think a lot of people find careers that imitate their dynamic. So their work family is reminiscent of their childhood family in some ways. And then they're repeating certain patterns.
And so talking about people like these sets, so I want to have like the overview of, as you said, the college kids, and then you move forward into the high schoolers. So going much more back into the topic, how do you think a family's involvement or a family dynamics affect a human being's mental health? Like, some comes from the family where. So how do you deal with these kind of people where their family has already an issue, like
Mhm.
whether it's parents not taking care of the kid
Mhm.
or anything. So and these people will start to develop much serious issues because they haven't had the nurture right from the start.
Right, right. Well, it's always an age-old question, nature, nurture, which is which, but it's in psychology, it people have always said it's both. You know, you're born with a set of traits, and then the environment may smack you into a more extreme place. And then you have the perfect storm, you know.
There was a very famous line from the movie. I'm sure you must have watched it. I don't remember the name exactly, but I remember the actor. Sylvester Stallone have once mentioned in one of his movies. He says, "No matter who you are, the life hits on your knees so hard that you will fall down in front of it, and you have the courage to pick yourself up.
Mhm,
You
mhm.
will stand out. If not, you will be there. The life tries to keep you there on your
Yeah,
knees."
exactly. Isn't that, I mean, that's been my experience. No one's gonna come over and say, "Oh, Donna, you look so tired today." Like, no, you gotta do this adulting thing, and it's hard. You have to keep on reinventing yourself over and over.
And yes, exactly. You took a word called adulting, right? Uh, how do you think people struggle in that phase of life?
Well,
Like, the transition they have all of a sudden from being a kid to adult,
mhm. Yeah,
and
well,
they see all.
it's confusing because, like, for example, some professions, you want the person to be like OCD people do great as lawyers and
Attention to
doctors,
detail.
and you want your doctor to be obsessive, right? But but at home, it doesn't work so well, like, so you have there's it's hard to regulate yourself for different situations. It's really, really hard, and and people need to practice communicating and practice learning new skills. They sometimes come to therapy and they say, "Well, you haven't helped me," and then we say, "Well, have you changed anything?" They say, "No." So what do you what's going to change if you don't change anything?
That is, I mean, that is for sure. And the the idea of resilience is something that I want to shed some more light on from you. So, as you said, of course, I personally am happy. Touch wood, I am blessed with that nature, that I am resilient enough. So, oftentimes I fall really bad. I go through like rough patches that I can't even explain.
Mhm,
Yet, I always tell myself this: the show must go on.
mhm,
The sun will rise again.
mhm,
These are the couple of statements that even my one of my walls in my
mhm.
room, the other side, has that written there. That if even the darkest night will have a sunshine the
Right,
next
well, that's
morning.
why
So
we have these wonderful cliches. Sometimes I think I'm just a walking cliche because everybody does go through these things. It's universal. That's why the cliches resonate.
so how do you think a person? I mean, do you think it even possible for a person to build the resilience in him, even though eventually
Yes,
in his life?
yes. That's how I think about it, is building resilience, just like going to the gym. if you go every day and you strengthen your arm muscles, you're gonna have better arm muscles. It's very clear that you can do that. You can just make simple shifts in your patterns and routines and add in more structure usually and better sleep and self-care, and you will see a change.
That is, well, I mean, yeah, these are something that I personally can tell that they'll work, because oftentimes if your day goes as planned, or if your day is properly structured enough, oftentimes you're less overthinking in your head. You're living in the real
Right.
world, in the present tense, and oftentimes they are something that people tend to manage up. And coming to this question that I was once asked by somebody. uh, So I have, like, my cousins are pretty younger. They are all like 3-4 years younger to me, and then we all come through that age where we all deal with a lot of these things. And one of the people have asked me a really good question that I could never pick up. How to figure out that a behavior is normal or a crisis behavior?
Right. Exactly.
Because oftentimes people have this question that, okay, is it normal that whatever I'm going through or I'm feeling right
Mhm.
now, or is this crisis that I have to take care of?
Right. I mean, that's a big question with me, and it takes a careful, skilled assessment by a professional to see the nuances of, oh, you're anxious a little or you're anxious a ton. Are you Is it just hard to go to sleep, or have you not slept in a week? These things make a difference in our assessment. Did a guy uh, kiss you that you didn't want to kiss you, or was it sexual assault? Like, we have to find out the kind of nuances of what happened to this.
And I mean, since that you have mentioned it a couple of times now, that is something that I generally go through very much. That is, my sleep schedule is very bad,
Yeah,
so I can't sleep. I'm known for this in my
yeah.
family. My mom proudly announces this everywhere she goes.
Mhm.
That I genuinely can't sleep. So even if I cut off my mobile screen, I reduce my screen time, yet I can't sleep. So what I do is I read one of those books that behind me. I pick up, I randomly start reading. I just stay up very late. My overall sleep itself is less, and
Mhm.
I wake up very quickly. Oftentimes in sleep, even I am sweating a lot. So what do you think are these reasons? I mean, of course, it's not live diagnosis, guys. Please don't take it. I just want to know, like, what
Right.
such kind of symptoms lead
So
to.
I study sleep a lot, like casually as a mental health professional. Like, I ask about it every
Wow.
time. Okay.
Wow. I want to talk about it now. Yes.
Yeah.
Let's go on.
So, first of all, again, you got to ask the right questions. I had a client who said he was having panic attacks all day long. I ask a lot of careful questions, then I find out, oh, you work the night shift. Oh, interesting. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day? Oh, 14 cups a day. So
Okay.
you're having panic attacks? No kidding. Of course you are. Okay. So the other piece is that I have met hundreds of kids who tell me that they can't wake up in the morning. They go to school half asleep, half dead. They haven't eaten anything. They eat around 11:30, 12 for the first time, maybe. They come home. They go to sleep after school. They take a nap. No one tells them not to. They sleep from 4 to 7. Then they have dinner, and then they're up all night with their friends doing homework and chatting and even sleeping while they're on FaceTime. Then the next morning comes, same cycle again. So, like, you want to feel better right away? Change your sleep schedule immediately. Because sleep and mood are also correlated very closely.
So, so you mean, how do you think they are, like? Is there any scientific reasoning behind how they are correlated and why they are correlated exactly?
Yeah, again, I don't know if I could explain it scientifically, or- but uh, empirically, it appears to be the case. So again and again, if people aren't sleeping, they're going to feel like crap. I mean, we know that.
That is that's absolutely the case. I mean, oftentimes it you get cranky is what I
Mm.
personally say that. And the other part, this is another question. So any specific tips for people who love to get their sleep schedule correct?
Well, the thing is, everybody resists structure, but most people that I know need structure, including me. And that's how I survived the pandemic. I just kept that freaking routine. At one point, it became too much. It became robotic, which was not good for me. That was pushed it into burnout. But for most people, structure helps them. Even if you want to schedule free time, go ahead, schedule free time.
That is that is awesome. I mean, so basically you should work on a plan. There should be a plan.
A plan for every day. It makes you feel better. It makes you feel less out of control, right?
And how do you think the overall, I mean, of course we are talking about emotions right now, so that's a little tangential to it. How do you think not sleeping or having a bad sleep schedule affects their analytical and cognitive health, the ability of thinking?
Yeah. Well, over time, we can see that could, in an extreme, that could push you into a manic episode. It could push you into a sort of hyper feeling. Then you crash, you get exhausted, you can't make good decisions, you're overwhelmed. And a lot of intellectuals I find fall into this trap. Go, go, go. I got to do more. I got to be better. I'm not enough. Over explaining, overthinking everything. But it doesn't work. It's not productive. Like ruminating on one thing over and over, which causes you to not sleep, it doesn't work. You, it's like, try to let it go. You're not going to find the answer. It's over already. It's over.
That is that. I mean, I connect to this so much because I go through it on a daily basis.
Mhm.
Because personally, oftentimes I have these episodes where I wake up in middle of the night and I start, so I'm in sleep thinking about something,
Mhm.
and I wake up and I start writing a math problem on a paper, as if thinking that, oh wait, I was solving this in my sleep, and I woke
Mhm.
up and I was like, wait a second, and then I don't remember the problem, and I realize, okay, well, I was sleeping and
Mhm.
it's a dream that I got,
Yeah, I mean,
and
people often try to finish unfinished business in their sleep, right? It's just something about us we don't like a closed, an open loop, right? But
that's another reason why I don't really get to sleep often,
yeah,
because what happens is I can't really, my mind can't stay, uh, is what I personally feel. It can't stay at a specific region where I know I am happy and I can sleep. I am
right,
always in the sense where I feel I'm losing something or I need something more,
right.
and I constantly run behind that something more
Right, right. Well,
so much.
we're conditioned in this society to like do the next thing and the next thing and get ahead and get ahead. But sometimes you have to pause and consolidate what you already have and remind yourself that the bad stuff is over. I ruminated about my parents' divorce for decades. Why did it happen? What happened? What did I do wrong? What did they do wrong? What was going on? How could it have been prevented? Whose fault was it? Over and over until I was finally so tired of banging my head against the wall. I was like, I just gotta let it go.
That
I'll
is
never know all the answers.
that's true. I mean, oftentimes, sometimes, I mean, the point is, somebody have told me this before as well, which is very very deeper in it, as a meaning in itself. The act of holding is easy. Process of letting it go is hard.
That's exactly right. We're not trained, but we can train ourselves to shift the way our brain thinks about something. Like, okay, if it's going round and round, you can even say to yourself, stop and literally pivot and do something else.
And even that's with this case as well. There is one more. A lot of my Indian people who are watching this might be knowing the statement that I'm trying to say right now, from which movie it is. So there was it's not the goodbyes, it's the memories that start to haunt you for a long time
Mm,
that you can't get let go of.
right,
And then eventually you will find a particular spot in there where you make peace with it. That okay, it's fine, it happened. Now I want to move forward.
right, right. But closure is sort of a myth, isn't it? Like
It is.
sometimes you can get it if you try and talk and do the work and listen but sometimes it just doesn't happen. And that's just part of
I
adulthood.
mean, I personally feel the world is always a place where, the more you explain, the more people might listen is always a false statement.
Mm,
Oftentimes, the more you explain, you are just explaining. That's it. It's your effort. It gets unnoticed most of the
all
times.
right.
And moreover, talking about the ideology of anything like a problem in itself is something that I personally tell to my friends, to me as well, to anybody that I ever find is basically, you know, facing problem has nothing to do. Like you don't have to, fight
Mm,
a battle walking outside. Just stand, just calm, just be
yeah,
standing there.
that's it.
Like,
And that
whoa,
I learned that from yoga. Like I you can just be able to hold it. And that's such a huge ability that we all can strengthen inside of ourselves.
that is really, really awesome to,
Mhm.
talk about. One more thing, since I am drinking it right now, to anybody who's watching it, how much do you think caffeine affects mental health?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know what the studies are, but anything that's a stimulant, whether it's your ADHD medication or coffee or chocolate or all those things, they're going to amp you up. The caffeine drinks like the Four Loco and all that crap. We know it's going to hype you up. So why do it if you're already prone to anxiety?
So I mean, if let's say if a person who doesn't really have this kind of behaviors yet, he's interested or he's more inclined towards having more caffeine in a day. Do you think it on a longer run? Do you think it will cause a issue for him mentally that okay, without a particular stimulant, he's now unable to work
Um,
or
Yeah,
function?
it's hard to say. I mean, everybody's different, and coffee is just one example. But you gotta
Yeah.
just be mindful of taking better care of yourself in terms of just moderation. You don't have to abstain from all, in my opinion, but be mindful, be aware, all those good things because you're not helping yourself if you already have a tendency to anxiety.
Yeah, inclination towards some of these issues. And have you ever worked closely with people who have suicidal tendencies or self-harm tendencies?
Yes. So I also work at a small suicide prevention center in New York called Solace House. They offer free therapy for suicidal
Oh, wow.
people, but it's very small. And so I do work in the suicide space, and it's a tremendous responsibility for therapists. And life and death situations, and you have to really have a good, solid plan of protocols. First, we do this. If there's suicidal ideation, then we do that. Then we call the doctor. Then we call 911. Then we call the hospital. Like, it's not a mystery. We know how to do it, but it's just there's not enough people getting paid enough to do it more.
And talking about our if there's a chance of getting into a person's brain who's suicidal, what do you think will we able to find?
Loss
Like
of
what?
loss of options. Like your brain is playing a trick on you, and you're no longer able to see options, a way out of any certain stressful situation. Your brain becomes tunnel vision because it's trying to protect itself, and then you can no longer see choices.
And okay, so it's under any circumstance. So oftentimes something that contributes towards a person's mental, you know, because that is the maximum that you can do it to yourself,
Mm.
like letting yourself, you know, go through so much pain that you don't really exist in the world anymore.
Right. It's
And
trying to it's trying to numb yourself. It's trying to get away from pain. Absolutely.
so, I mean, I always have this question that, what are such circumstances that people really choose this
Hmm.
option?
Yeah, it's very strange. Like sometimes the person doesn't have a history of depression, but they're somehow activated to do something very impulsive at the same time that they can't find any other options. Sometimes it's really hard to explain or see the antecedent. On the other hand, sometimes it's very obvious what all the antecedents are, and no one ever bothered to, you know,
Work with
work
them.
with it. Yeah.
And
We can do
how
prevention in schools. We can give them a screening and then we can check them out. But parents are afraid of stigmatizing their children.
Yeah, I mean, talking about these things actually happen across the world, across the globe is something that most of them might be having as an issue in itself.
But I'd rather have a
And
false positive. Like a kid came over the summer, she got screened at school for having suicidal ideation. The school asked me to see her. I saw her. I decided it doesn't. She's okay. I'd rather have that for my kid than the other stuff.
absolutely, I mean, prevention is always better than cure.
It is, and we know how to do it, but we just need to put more focus on it as a culture. And I'm afraid it's not going that way right now.
Why do you think so?
Yeah, because I'm sorry to say, but this MAGA stuff really is promoting each man for himself, which is not the way I was raised. People need communities, people need support and friends and positivity and acceptance and tolerance and um it's just doesn't the world doesn't see the world seems to be going in a different direction.
And do you think it'll come back to the actual way of living, like in communities or in that at any point of time?
I just really hope so. I really hope so. I mean, my father used to say everything goes in a cycle, and you live long enough, you see the cycle swing back to the center. I hope so.
And
Because vulnerable people are not going to get what they need right now. And it's scary because you could be that person in 1 second, like in California, you could wake up today and you have no more help. Are we going to help each other or not?
we do, yeah, agreed. And I would like to ask you a few tips for people who might be
Mhm.
watching that, or maybe their friends or somebody around them is suicidal. So, what do you think some of the preventive tips that a person can take to prevent such kind of thought process or tendencies?
All right. Well, first of all, you can't be your friend's therapist, no matter how wonderful and smart and caring, because you're not trained in all these things. Okay. That's number two is there's no shame in it. People go through things, try to, ask for help. No, number three is, it could be 10 minutes and it could change your life, like some kind of intervention, like, oh, I never thought about it that way. So be open to that shift. And what else? Teens and suicide, also practical. Like maybe you're just bored. Like, can you just get one thing to do? Like one thing that you like to do? Doesn't even matter what it is. Maybe you would want to take a fencing class. I don't know, but do something.
Fair. That is, I mean, oftentimes the more busy you get, the less such kind of thought
Mm.
process is what you fall into, is what I personally trust
Yeah,
a
it
lot.
works.
And do you deal with people of working class men, like people who actually work, or is it less in terms of your dealing?
Well, this suicide prevention group started in the Irish community in the Bronx because so many construction workers were going through suicide um, situations because it's a
Oh,
very stressful job. They're outside, they're in the elements, they're overworked, they're underpaid, it's dangerous. The weather affects you. The culture of guys in that whatever toxic masculinity stuff. Um, it's very certain professions can be very stressful. Doctors, therapists, construction workers. If I understood your question, yeah.
yes, yes. That's what I was asking. Because I mean, I wanted to know, like, do you really work with people? We spoke about teenage and adults, so like the adolescence age or the teen building age. Basically, we are talking about like people who are like around 25 years of age, from their teens to 25 years
Mm.
of age. So, do you work with people who actually have like who actually are in their 30s or 40s?
Yes, yes. Mostly women.
You know,
It's you know
most of them.
because they just seem they're more likely to come to therapy, and then they have I think more serious transitions. Becoming parents and things like that.
Oh, you take. Oh,
Mhm.
okay. What are a few common mental health issues that you look at in these kind of things, like becoming parents
Yeah,
or divorce?
a lot of them are dealing with just being overwhelmed of the demands on their time. And, we can help with that kind of thing by just breaking it down and figuring out priorities and, asking for help.
Fair, fair. So I mean, so you're trying to say that most of the times these people have these mental health issues when they start something new, basically in their life, like becoming a mom,
Hmm.
or maybe going through divorce, starting a new relationship,
Or
or things like
a
that.
health scare of some kind. Yeah,
Okay.
that a lot of those kind of things, or a divorce, those will trigger for therapy as well.
And do people tend to have postpartum is what they say,
Mhm.
right? So do people tend to have any postpartum traumas or stress?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we all know there's not enough support for new moms. That's a whole nother topic. Yeah.
That is
It's a very
okay.
isolating time in a woman's life for many, many reasons.
And And do you think in especially in couples right now, after like post pandemic time is what I'm
Mm.
talking, how do you think the dynamics of couple have changed with so many, I was doing a podcast with a psychologist who's professional in dating, specific dating, couple theory and dating. She was mentioning few terms that I have never heard of. So she started to explain me that this is what's happening outside in the world. So people are starting to have issues. How do you think these dynamics are affecting in the real world when it comes to the mental health
Well,
issues?
since I hear mostly from women, it's not good. Guys, you need to get your act together, especially in New York. I'm hearing stories. I mean, the ghosting thing is the wildest thing of all. And I had one client whose boyfriend was living with her for 2 years, and then one day he just picked up and left with no trace, no trace, no. But what does anybody learn from that? That's my thing. Like, if you don't communicate, you don't learn anything. So,
And why do you think ghosting have been?
well,
She was mentioning that
yeah.
same thing, so that's why I want to know
Yeah,
this
well,
your
I
opinion on
went
it.
in some Facebook group about relationships or something because I was really curious at one point. I said, what is this phenomenon of ghosting? Like, what is going on? And I had hundreds of comments that said, basically, you don't owe anybody anything. And I just thought that's so cold. Like, you live with someone for 2 years and you can't even say goodbye. Like, you don't
Yeah, I mean,
you're not helping yourself, that's for sure. And there's a famous psychologist named Harville Hendrix who wrote a book called Getting the Love You Want. And he said he stopped counseling couples towards divorce because they would come in a few years later with the same issue with the new guy or gal. So you might as well fix it while you can, where you are.
And what do you think about where do you think this spans out? Because oftentimes what happens is people are not completely aware of
Mhm.
themselves to what. So basically, that's what I feel. They are not completely aware of themselves that what they can offer in a relationship and have expectations on the partner,
Mhm.
and eventually they have issues where the partner is fulfilling the expectation or not, and eventually falls into the trap of trying to find better, 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 and then they never, and
You're
they
right. You're right. There's more uh unrealistic expectations, but they're also like, let's say you have a girl with anxious attachment. She wants to settle down. She wants to feel secure, which so many of them do for many reasons because the world is becoming harder. And then you have a guy who has anxious and avoidant attachment, and he's just can't get into the intimacy with just one partner. It's a perfect storm for conflict there. And then you have the
yeah, I mean that is
pursuer
enough.
and
Yeah,
the
where
distancer. Pursuer, distancer. That's always been a dynamic in couples. So you have to slow down, you have to listen, you have to communicate. It ain't easy. I've been married 32 years. And a lot of, there's a lot of talking and yelling, but you gotta listen.
absolutely. And as we talk through the end of this, I would like to know a couple of more things. That is, where do you think uh you know putting the dating as one segment, ideology of career at one segment, ideology of growing up at one
Mhm.
segment, where do you think a human life is going towards, like lately that people, where do you think that how people are eventually moving through these phases forward? Because
Mhm.
day by day these things are getting harder
Mm, mm,
because everybody is learning new ways in them.
mm,
So there was a time when meeting people or dating was like in a very closed circle, because let's say if there's a small town guy and a girl, the maximum that they know among their age group is 50
yeah.
people, in which maybe they are close to 10 of
Mhm.
them, in which maybe one of them is
Mhm.
single or three of them are
Right.
single. Let's say so now the count have come around to three people now. So things get easier
Mm,
to but now that online dating has come into the place, similar to career things, because there was a point where people used to choose career paths in a way that which they suit the best. Now they're competing with people across the globe.
mm, mm.
Hence, the point is, as life getting harder, how do you think a human being is evolving, cruising through these
Right.
things,
I mean,
and being stronger
that's
every
the
day?
billion-dollar question because people are not doing so well. Well, obviously, I see a skewed group of people, but yeah, you're right. Things are moving faster. People don't have all the coping skills, and they're getting more easily overwhelmed. Things are more complicated, like just getting to the doctor, things like that, getting your car inspected. So I like to focus on the practical. Um, Like, take care of these basic things one by one, slow down, so you can do the other more promising thing.
Absolutely. And any few tips to the teenagers that are watching around across the
Yes,
globe?
that
Uh,
that this does not have to define you. Like, you can get through hard things, you can do hard things, you can have a depressive episode, and you can have panic, but it doesn't mean you're damaged for life. You can rebound, and we have to believe that there's hope and and possibilities for change.
so before I, we move towards closure. So what I understand from the way we have spoken till now is there exists no mental health issue that you can't move forward from.
Well, no, there are some very serious mental health issues that are a whole different
Like if you can say,
bipolar, schizophrenia,
okay, yeah, 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 yeah.
personality disorders, narcissism, all of that, borderline personality, what we call axis 2 disorders. That is much, much harder. and might even take a lifetime of work.
And do you spot these? I mean, of course, schizophrenia is something that I'm familiar with. I have so I did some study of psychology when I was an undergrad a few years back, couple of years back, and so I want to know. So how much of these the things that you have mentioned are common in kids, and why do you think they might be going through them?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, some scientists think that it relates to what they call the pruning process. So all this stuff comes into to the executive function, frontal lobe stuff, and then it prunes back, which means like it highlights the good pathway. So in some cases, there's a glitch in your 20s, and the wrong pathways don't get
Big.
removed. They don't get removed and pruned away. But I don't know more than that from a scientific level, but it's quite
That
serious.
so it's very interesting to listen that how your brain picks up the patterns that are really good for your own
Mm.
health and your own being. It's wonderful on the whole in itself. So, and ultimately, few takeaways for people who are watching this would be, uh, make sure you talk to the right
Mhm.
person, right people, get the right help, learn to be resilient
Mhm.
with help, or if you're resilient, that's great, of
Mhm.
course. And eventually, whatever you're feeling, whether it's a minute anxiety to suicidal tendencies, talking does help.
Mhm.
Reaching out for help does help,
Mhm.
and uh, it is something that I would absolutely thank people like you who work for the community and for people social well-being,
Mhm.
because often what happens is everybody lives through these problems and most of them have no idea what to comment on each other's
Mhm.
problems. So despite of me and my friend going through the same things, I might not be able to communicate to him that might be helpful for him, because me and him are two different people in them itself. Maybe I'm more resilient, maybe I am more
Mhm.
stronger as a person mentally, and maybe the other person is not. So people like you, or the psychiatrists, the therapists, everybody who does help uh, for people navigating through their life, and oftentimes explaining that this is not a big deal, it's not something that defines you, this is something that can be taken care of,
Mhm.
will of course shape better individuals, better human beings, and make society much better than what it is today, and eventually the best as well is what I'm
Mhm.
expecting to be at some point of the world. Thank you so much for joining us, Donna. It's a wonderful conversation
Thank you.
from what I had.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your service that you're doing to people. Thank you so much for being there for suicidal tenant people and helping them through their life. That's something that I always feel, that you're no less than a god when you help somebody to come back to life
Mm.
from a experience that they want to kill themselves. On that note, I would just say thank you so much for joining. Any questions, any suggestions for me?
Not right now, but it was really, you asked so many good questions. I really appreciate being able to do this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking your time. Thank you so much for the compliment.
Oh, and
All
if
right,
you
guys.
want
On that,
more, donnacmoss.com and donnacmoss.com /course.
yeah,
COURSE. Mhm.
I will leave the links in the description, guys. On that note, take care. Hope you all are doing great in your lives. And if not, reach out to the people like her who can help you in your surroundings around. And on that note, thank you so much for watching, guys. That's Take Podcast for you. I'll see you on the next episode.
If you're depressed, if you're anxious, you're not weak, you're not crazy, you're not in the main a machine with broken parts. You're a human being with unmet needs.